My name's Maddie, and I just bought a 136 High Top Promaster van that I'm going to convert by myself. I've been spending pretty much all of my time working on this, just on the internet, figuring out what materials I want to get, watching how-to videos, and I'm really excited. It's been quite some time since I filmed that last video. I filmed that in mid-September and flew up the same weekend to Seattle, Washington with one of my very best friends in the whole world. Shout out Chloe Bradburn. And picked up my van. We then drove all the way back down to Santa Cruz and we moved out of our lovely house there the following week. I drove my van from Santa Cruz all the way out here to Austin, Texas. I have been living with my brother for the past couple months building out the van. My brother just finished renovating this whole house and he has graciously allowed me to live here and use all of his space and tools to convert my van. I think that this is a really awesome opportunity to share the adventure with all of you and hopefully help some people who are trying to do the same thing. Without further ado, I'm just gonna get into how I've been doing this and I hope that you guys enjoy watching. The first thing I had to do was take out all the stuff I didn't want when I got the van. It came with a divider that separated the cab from the front two seats. It came with this disgusting, ugly flooring that I knew I wanted to take out. And it also came with these giant 150 plus pound storage compartments, which were a pain in the bum to get out of there. So first things first was removing all those. I don't have any footage from that because it was mostly just a flurry of me trying to get started as soon as possible. The next step was to start framing out the van, and then I also put in sound deadening kind of at the same time.
Even though the ProMaster is pretty much a box, there are some curves here. So I'm going to drill a hole through this 1x2 all the way through the center beam. I'm going to put another 1x2 on the other side, and then I'm going to take this long piece of metal that I'm going to cut to size to fit through the wood, through that center beam, and through the other 1x2. And essentially there's going to be enough tension on all of this to keep the wood to the ceiling.
Step 2 was installing the max air fan. I think a lot of people get really scared over the idea of cutting a hole in their van, which is completely justified. Though I will say it's been one of the most fun things I've done to the van so far. It was my first time using the jigsaw and it cut through like butter and the fan fit perfectly. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but because there's ridges on the top of your van, your fan doesn't sit flush. So what I did was use butyl tape and I just layered the butyl tape up. I think I put 3 layers in between the ridges, and then the fan sits really flush, and I use the screws and the sealant after that, and eventually I'll put in the bottom support panel and that'll work just fine for me. So that was the second thing I did and it looks pretty great.
do it.
So one of the first things I knew that I wanted to do was one of the easier tasks, which was installing new flooring insulation.
Floor insulation is optional, but it's super helpful the same way that the studding on the walls are helpful. So those guys are gonna make it a lot easier to attach things to the walls. The floor insulation is going to make it a lot easier to bolt my cabinetry and my bed to the floor. So what I've done is I've taken the same 1x2 framing that I used on the walls and I have glued it to the bottom of the van. And then I've taken a very thin 1/4 inch thick insulation and I have approximately fit it in between all of these frames. After this, I'm going to take a very thin plywood and I'm going to lay it over the top of this entire thing, and then over that is going to go my really nice vinyl flooring that I'm eventually going to install.
6 hours later.
Hello my friends, I am getting to work on the plywood for the flooring. I'm just going to use a jigsaw. Mask up, dudes! Okay, so after that, it was time to start installing the wiring. Wiring was a little bit tedious for me just because as someone who has zero experience with electrical systems, I really wanted to make sure that I had my entire electrical system planned out. And so, you know, I'm giving you all these steps onto what I did in the van, but I think it's really important to note that so much time was spent just behind the screen researching all of these things. I don't think that it would be possible for me to complete this if I didn't contribute the hours of research into understanding how I wanted to do this and watching other people who've already done this. I am just so thankful for this community and for this platform, for the people who have paved the way to make this possible.
So I'm going to start connecting all of my wiring to the frame of my van. I said at the beginning of this video that I've been spending a heck of a lot of time planning out my electrical system, and I think I have pretty much everything ready. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm going to do, but I just want to preface that I am in no way an expert. And if you are planning to do your own van conversion, I highly recommend you have a professional at least check out your system. If not, just pay someone to do it for you. Okay, so now that I gracefully brought all of the materials I'll need into the van, I'm going to show you what I'll be using today. I'm using this conduit. This is 3/4 inch. I think maybe 1 inch would have been better, but it'll work just fine. I'm using these as extra protection for my wires. And here's the wire that I selected. This is a 12 gauge wire for DC appliances, meaning it has one positive, the red, and one negative or neutral, the black. And for van conversions, it's super important to choose multi-stranded copper wire for preventing breakage. So if you just chose like a one-stranded copper wire, you're going to be driving this van, if you're anything like me, off really bumpy roads. And over time, all of the vibrations of the van are going to cause that copper wire to break. So by getting a multi-stranded wire, it's super flexible, and I'm pretty much preventing that from ever happening. This is a double insulated marine grade wire. Marine grade essentially means that it is rated to really low and high temperatures, which is convenient for my van because even with all the insulation, it is going to be prone to pretty cold and pretty hot temperatures. And it also provides extra protection. So I'm not too concerned over the safety of these wires, but I did want to provide some extra protection with the conduit along these mid ridges of the van because they have some pretty sharp edges, and I just think over time it'll be better to have those super protected. One of the other reasons that people use conduit is because if at any point you decide to add, say, an extra USB outlet to your van, you have this conduit that you can feed your wire through, and you don't have to like take apart your walls to be able to put it in. You can just feed it through the conduit. So for the sake of what I'm doing, I'm going to use conduit when I can, and for places like the ceiling, when I know I just want my 6 LED lights, I don't want anything else up there, plus my fan, I'm just going to use the double insulated wire without any conduit. Next, we have these wire cutters. Pretty straightforward. You need to get a pretty clean cut on your wires. This will do the job just fine. So I'm just going to get to work. Oh, that's not it. Gaffer tape. This is the other thing that I'm going to be using. When I'm not using the conduit, I'm just going to be using gaffer tape to tape it to the walls. It'll work just fine. When you're starting a conversion, it's pretty important that you already have a really good idea of where things are going. So I know that my entire electrical system is going to be stored right next to this wheel box where my eventual seating / bed area will go. And so I need all of my wires to run from that area to wherever I'm going to have appliances in the van. So I bought extra wire knowing that I'm very new to this, and I'm going to just give myself a lot of extra space. If I'm concerned if I provided enough length of wire, I'm just going to add an extra 6 inches to a foot just to make sure that I don't have a problem down the road when I'm assembling my electrical system. I'm going to start with LED lights because those are the things that make the most sense to me. I just need to mark out where I'm going to have them on the ceiling and go from there. So in every spot where I know there's going to be a light socket, I'm essentially just going to create a little bite on this and then tape it up just like that so that when it comes time to wire it to my LED, I have all of this extra space to work with. So 3 to 4 hours kind of turned into 3 to 4 days, but I am all done with the wiring. Most of my outlets are going to go on this side of the van, so I've left a bite here for my LED dimmer switch, as well as a little bit of cord for my DC outlet slash USB outlet. I've wrapped a few of the wires up through the center beam, but after a while it gets really stinking hard to fit wire through there. So for the very last wire for my under cabinet lighting, you can see I just fed it through and have it going parallel to this cross beam all the way down to here. So I've left plenty of bites to allow for a dimmer switch, as well as between 1 to 4 lights depending on what I decide. I'm also going to have some AC 110 volt switches over here. I have my water pump as well as my water heater going all the way up and around through conduit down here to where those are going to be located next to my sink. I'm ready to move on to insulation. I have my handy dandy caulking gun here with me with some liquid nails in it that are going to help me to adhere this to all of the panels of my van. And for all of those areas that I am not just going to easily glue down, I'm going to break the wool apart with my razor or with my fingers, wearing gloves because of microglass, and I'm just going to stuff it into all of those little crevices as best as possible. I think that this is one of the biggest reasons people choose foam insulation, is it saves a lot of time in this way, but I just chose to go with this wool for all of my insulation, aside from the flooring, as you guys know. Let's just get started and see how far I get today. I don't know that I'll finish it today because the rule number 1 lesson of van building is everything takes about 3 times as long as you think it's going to take.
72 hours later.
I'm liking how much the van is starting to look like cotton candy. It certainly doesn't feel like cotton candy. If you think that you can get away with not washing your hair after you've just worked with insulation, I will tell you right now, you are sorely mistaken. So yeah, I've pretty much caught you guys up. I suppose after I'm done with the vapor barrier, I'm probably going to get started building these seat benches out in the back. This seat bench in particular is where I'm going to have the entirety of my electrical system installed, and I do want to make sure that that's done pretty soon so that I can double check that things like my fan and my solar panels and my LED lights are going to work properly before I install the walls and the ceiling, so that I don't cover up all my wiring, because in the event that I have to switch anything out, I don't want everything to already be covered up. This has been a pretty incredible adventure so far. I've had a lot of fun with it, and it's really exciting to be able to share it with you guys. So I hope that you've enjoyed watching so far, and in the next video we'll see where I am with the builds, and I'll see you next time. Sexy safety goggles, check. Sexy safety goggles, check. I'm not an expert. Let's just be clear, I am not an expert.
I really want to just put like 2 cars right here, so I can just grab and just swing into the van. That'd be cool. It'd actually be cool.
Somebody's gonna get That'd be hilarious.
Oh,